Wow. The hostages have been released and Israel is ecstatic. It's videos of the hostages meeting their families, having their first meal, going to their first soccer game, having their first celebration. I mean, it's all about that. So the first stage of the deal has been more or less run through, meaning hostages, the 20 hostages that are still alive have been released. The ceasefire has gone into play, and aid is supposed to be going into the Gaza Strip. Another thing that was part of the first stage of the deal was that the Rafah crossing, the crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, should have been open. The Rafah crossing is not open, and it's not open because Hamas has already broken the first stage of the ceasefire. The second stage of the agreement is what we saw all over the news. President Trump in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt with all of the leaders of the Arab world, of the Muslim world, peace in the Middle East, eternal peace, prophetic peace, amazing peace, everything. But the first stage has not been fulfilled yet, because the first stage said that, one, the Hamas would return the live hostages, but also return all of the bodies. And there's still 48 bodies that need to be returned. So the Hamas, on the first day, returned only 4. And what we did is, like everybody else does, you take them to our pathological center, and we check the remains to see if they are actually the bodies. And it turns out that they gave us 3 bodies of Israelis, but one of the bodies was a Hamas terrorist, literally in uniform, in Hamas uniform. And the whole country is ecstatic, euphoric, but really, really upset. And so they are stalling, they're pushing away, they're trying to play games with the bodies, as we can see. Again, we're not surprised. You shouldn't be surprised that this is what a terrorist organization does. But here's what makes it even more complex. Let's say we go through the whole idea and slowly we get at least most of the remains, most of the bodies home. The problem is that the second stage states very clearly that Hamas should disarm. They will not be a threat. They should be disarming from their weapons, and they should be disbanding as a governmental source. But they're parading around the Gaza Strip right now. They're yelling that they are in control. They're yelling that they will never disarm. Not only that, they're using their weapons to line up lines of Gazan people who they believe are collaborators with Israel, and literally kneeling them down in the middle of the street and taking them out in the middle of the street. I mean, you can see videos of it right now. By the way, I don't understand why when Israel takes out Hamas operatives, the world goes crazy, and when the Hamas kills its own people, nobody says anything. Nobody does anything. There were the demonstrations. You don't see the demonstrations. But that's what's going on right now. And Hamas has said, we're not going to give up our weapons. We are a resistance organization. We need to be resistance, and we're not going to give up our weapons. And President Trump said this today, very, very clearly, very, very direct. You can't get much clearer than that. The Hamas should be giving up their weapons, dismantling as a military organization. That is part of the agreement that everybody signed. That's a part of the agreement that Sisi signed, that Qatar signed, that Turkey signed, that Hamas will be disbanded. Hamas will not be a military force. And they're saying, we're not going to do this. And President Trump was very clear. Here's what he said.
We have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them. Got it?
You can't get much clearer than this. But here's the problem. The feeling that we have in Israel is that the world is tired of this. They don't really care if Hamas is disbanded. They don't really care if the bodies come back. They just want to see this over. the Arab world is a Hamas supporter anyway, so they're more on the Hamas side anyway. So there's this feeling that if Israel wants to put pressure now on Hamas in order to get the remains of our people back as part of the agreement that they signed on to, in order to get Hamas to disband, because President Trump understands that they cannot be a threat to world power. In order for that to happen, Hamas needs to disband. And if they decide not to disband, they're saying, what are you going to do? You're going to come back and start shooting us their skin? The world will go crazy on you again. And that's the situation we are in right now. So this is a very, very critical time. This is a critical time. And let's put it this way. Israel has its hostages back. And I want to say, hear from Modin, hear from Israel, hear from the Middle East. I want to say thank you, President Trump, that you knew how to manipulate, arm wrestle, move everything around in order to make this agreement possible. And I want to go into a little bit about how this agreement is possible so you know what happened and why all of a sudden the Hamas agreed to something that if they had agreed to it 2 years ago, this would not have happened. If they'd agreed to it a year ago, all of this would not have happened. If they'd agreed to this 2 months ago, think about all the suffering that could have been saved. They agreed to it now, and the question is why? And here's what I think, and I suggest, I'm not the only one, by the way, but I suggest you check me out on this one. What changed? What changed since the beginning of the war is Israel took the initiative. Israel put the Hezbollah in Lebanon down on its knees. Israel put Syria down on its knees. Israel put Iran down on its knees together with the United States of America. And now we are a regional power. But the Hamas has still not agreed to release the hostages. And everybody was saying, ceasefire, release the hostages, ceasefire, release the hostages, ceasefire. The world was crawling out ceasefire, but the Hamas was not willing. And there was no pressure on the Hamas to release the hostages. The only thing is that the heads of Hamas were living in Doha. Doha is in Qatar. Qatar is the opposition of the Arab world. Qatar is a Gulf state sitting in the middle of the Persian Gulf, doesn't get along with any of the neighbors. And by the way, the population of Qatar is about 300,000 people. That's the whole population. But they knew very shrewdly to connect with the United States. The biggest military base in the Middle East sits in Qatar, literally about 35 miles from Doha. And Qatar actually has been double playing the game the whole way. And I've said this, others have said it, I'm not. It was not in their interest for this war to end. It was not in their interest for the agreement to be reached. And again, they have a problem with the Iranians. Okay, and I don't know if you remember, Iran fired a rocket at Qatar after the 12-day war and the whole taking out of the nuclear deal. So Qatar has been playing two sides of the stick. When did that change? Is that Israel flew halfway to Qatar and fired a couple of rockets that hit Doha and tried to take out the Hamas leadership in the middle of the capital city of Qatar. Now, it didn't work because we targeted the cell phones of the bodyguards, and it turns out that the bodyguards were 2 rooms away from the Hamas leadership. So the bodyguards all died, but the Hamas leadership survived. But Qatar freaked out. The Emir of Qatar, and I don't remember his name, we can look it up here. The Emir of Qatar freaked out. He said, wait a minute. We thought that we were untouchable. We thought that we were on the American side. We thought that this could never happen. If Israel decides that they want to take out somebody in here, remember, we took out the head of Hamas in Tehran, and they lost a lot of face. Qatar lost a lot of face, and that freaked them out. And what I think has happened was something like this. They go to the United States of America and say, this is not right. We can't do this. By the way, they were not the only ones. Everybody from Tucker Carlson to Piers Morgan. You don't take out the negotiators. You don't hit the negotiators. No. I mean, really, they are terrorists. They sat down and kneeled and prayed to God and said thank you when the people died on the 7th of October in Doha. Okay? You guys, when I say you guys, the United States of America went to Pakistan, which is an ally of the United States of America, and took out Osama bin Laden. None other than Barack Obama did it. So why can't we take out bad people in a foreign state? But again, Doha got all, Qatari's got all, by the way, Qatar is the one who fund and run Al Jazeera television network. Now, Al Jazeera is an anti-Israel, anti-American television network, and in English it's anti-America, in Arabic it's even worse. But it is the main television network in the Middle East. So Qatar freaked out, went to President Trump and said, we can't do this. The Israelis are going crazy. They're hitting our capital. And President Trump said, okay, what do you want me to do? And Qatar says, hold them back. Tell them not to. Make an issue. And President Trump said, yes, if I do that, what are you going to do for me? And they said, what do you want us to do? And he said, the heads of Hamas are living in your capital city. Make Hamas agree to the agreement. And that's what happened. I totally believe. So President Trump made Benjamin Netanyahu apologize to Qatar officially. And then President Trump did something that I'm kind of surprised that I haven't heard Tucker Carlson kind of complaining about it. President Trump signed a deal, like a NATO deal, like a Chapter 5 deal with Qatar that says if anybody attacks Qatar, it's like they attacked the United States of America. So the United States of America will put boots on the ground in order to defend Qatar. Now, why is Tucker Carlson and Dave Smith and all the others that are anti-Israel saying, America is being pulled in to defend Israel for Israel's interests, and it's not saying anything about the fact that America, the United States of America, has signed an agreement with Qatar, a Muslim nation that hates America. Watch Al Jazeera for 5 minutes, you'll know what I'm talking about. They made an agreement that if they need to, they will come defend there, and nobody's saying anything about it. Hypocrites. That's what they are. They're hypocrites. But anyway, Qatar put the screws on Hamas. And lo and behold, we have a hostage ceasefire deal, and we have the whole Arab world lining up in threes behind President Trump to sign on this deal. The only thing is that the Hamas are crazy. They're a jihadi death cult who do not care if they die in the rubble of Gaza, which is why they were put under pressure. They had no choice. They did give back the hostages, but they're playing hard to get. They're playing, we're not going to disarm, because if they disarm, they don't exist as an organization. And think about this. The last resistance to the existence of the state of Israel in the Middle East, if we go back to the 1930s and 40s, the whole world, the whole Arab world was against us. When Israel was created in 1948, 5 Arab nations came from all the different sections and attacked. Out of the 5 nations that attacked, 2 have peace agreements, 2 have non-attacking agreements, and 1 is part of reaching an agreement for the Abrahamic Accords. So all of the nations have given up. The only ones left to fight are the Palestinians. And the Palestinians created an organization called the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, that was blowing up planes in the 1970s and 1980s, and put together 2 intifadas. Remember, intifada is an uprising, shaking off, blowing up buses in Jerusalem. But even that failed. And the Palestinian Liberation Organization turned into the Palestinian Authority. They've reached the Oslo Accords. They have control over territories in Judea and Samaria, what people call the West Bank. And they've given up the resistance, put it that way. The last ones holding up the flag of resistance against Israel is the Hamas, is the Muslim Brotherhood chapter of the Palestinians, also known as the Hamas. It is the Palestinian version of ISIS. It's the Palestinian version of Al-Qaeda. It's a Palestinian version of we're not going to give up. We will fight the infidels forever and ever. They're the last ones fighting. And if they disarm, resistance is gone. And everything changes. So that is the situation right now. The Hamas is marching around in Gaza, making videos of them in their AK-47s and their black hoodies. But basically, President Trump is saying, you disarm or we're going to do it. And now is the cusp, okay? Will this be over, or will this continue into the rest of the world? So that was an overview of what's happening. Let's go a little bit personal. As you can see, I am still in Modi'in, Modi'in is a city that sits in the middle of Israel, halfway between Tel Aviv on one side, Jerusalem on that side. Tel Aviv's that way, Jerusalem's that way. It is a modern city, nice little city. This is where I live. This is my last night in Modi'in now, because tomorrow I'm starting 2 groups, touring the country and going from place to place. So we're going to go back into tour guide mode for 2 groups. By the way, these are the only 2 groups that I'm doing this year. I expect to see more of you in Israel, and we'll be talking about groups that are going to come to Israel, groups that I'm going to bring to Israel, and different kind of organizations. So 2 groups now, so I'll be on the road. The information that you're going to get is going to be from the Sea of Galilee in the beginning, and then later on from the Dead Sea, and then later on from Jerusalem. So you'll be following me as we go from place to place. Pray for me. It's hot. I haven't been doing groups for a while. It's very physically strenuous. It takes a lot of patience, but I love it, and it's amazing. You get to show people what Israel, what the Bible actually is. More and more people have been saying it's like watching the Bible come alive. It's like somebody said, putting 3D glasses on the Bible. I mean, it kind of works like that. So we're going into group mode. In the meantime, Christy is still in the States in grandma mode. I'm over here in tour guide mode. But after I finish the 2 groups, I will be going from organization to organization, talking to the people that Gihon Springs is actually supporting. So Gihon Spring is a ministry that supports Israel. We support widows. We support people who are getting dogs to treat PTSD. We're supporting a military unit. So after I finish these 2 groups, I'm going to go get on a tank up on the Golan Heights. Pray for me on that one, for better or for worse. But that's the situation right now. So this is DaviD TaL. This is a Balagan connection in Modi'in. We're on the cusp. This is really where it's going to happen. Pray for our leadership. Pray for President Trump. Pray for Bibi Netanyahu. Pray for the rest of the leaders to reach the right conclusions. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And I hope to see you here as soon as possible.